And voila, you can see here that we have the messages, right? So we have the date, we have the user, and we have the message. Okay, so short and sweet how you can connect a Slack to a Google Sheet. So in this video, I'm going to explain how to bring all the messages that you might have in a channel in a Google Sheet. You know, you might need this for something, or like the API works the same for other things. So once you understand how the API works, you can implement more things, right? So for now, I'm just going to explain this. So I have this flowchart here. I'm going to explain what we're going to do. So the first step is creating the app, right? So we need to create an app in Slack. And once we have the app, it's going to give us a token, an API token, and with that, we are ready to go. So this is the code structure, as you can see here. And basically, this API is pretty straightforward, so we don't need to do a lot of stuff, like crazy stuff, right? So we will have a function that is going to be the main Slack messages to sheet. Pretty much is going to be an orchestrator, and it's going to, orchestrate every step of the automation. So the first step is that we're going to fetch the conversation, right? The conversation history from the channel. Once we get the history, one thing is that the users in that history will come as user ID. It won't come like with the name. So we need to make another call to map the names using that ID, right? So that's why we have another function here, build Slack user map for messages. And then you can see that we have another function here on the left, that it says Slack API key. This is just a helper. Is the one that we want to use twice, once here and once here, and this is just to make the call to API to pull that data. And then once we have the data, we're gonna write that to a spreadsheet. Simple as that. So let's get into it. I will start a spreadsheet from scratch so you can see how I'm doing everything. So here we are in the spreadsheet, and as you can see, I don't have anything. So you go to extensions, app script, and here is gonna take you to the code. Let me make this bigger so you can see what I'm actually doing. Yeah, I think it looks good like that. Okay, so first, as I mentioned, we're gonna start with the first function, which is this main Slack messages to sheet. However, I like doing something which is creating a config with variables inside, so you can like change variables easily if something changes, right? So what I mean by that is this. Look, so we have this config, just a variable that contains more variables, right? So in this one, we want to have the Slack bot token, and that's coming from the app that we create here. So we're gonna do that. We're going to do that in a minute. Then we need the channel ID, right? From like the channel where we're getting the messages from. Then this is gonna be the output sheet, like how do we want the sheet to be called, right? In this case, I don't have anything. Like you can see here that I just created this, so it's the default sheet one. But once it runs this, is gonna create this sheet name. You can change the name to whatever you want, right? I'm just gonna leave it like Slack messages. And then we have the from date. So this is like what will be like the oldest message that we want from. This is important because maybe if you have like a channel that is like super old and you have like thousands or millions of messages, you don't want the automation to be just running and running and running, right? You want to put a cap. Okay, like now we need to create the app. So let's go to Slack, and you need to go to Slack apps. I'm going to put the URL below in the description, but it's this one. So it's this one, right? Like you can see that is api.slack.com/apps. That's the URL that we need to go to, right? So once we are there, you can see I just created this account, so I don't have anything. So if it is the first time that you're doing this, it will look like this. Otherwise, you will have like a button here saying that create an app. In this case, just create an app, right? Then you get two options. You choose from scratch, and then here you get a name. So I'm just gonna put like demo YouTube, and then you select the workspace, right? So in this case, I just have one, which is the one that I just created for this demo. But if you have more, just choose the one that you want to connect this app with. So demo YouTube, and you connect, right? So it's gonna take you to this place, and here you can see that you can do a bunch of stuff, but we need to go to OAuth and permissions, right? And here in OAuth and permissions, you need to scroll down, and here where it says scopes for a bot, that's the one that you need. So you're gonna click here and add an OAuth scope, and then you can choose whatever you wanna do with this bot. In this case, as I mentioned, we're gonna read channel history. So we need that. And we also need users read, right? Because as I mentioned, we need it in this part here to get the names themselves from the IDs, right? So we need to do that. So we select users read, and then once you have that, you gotta wait a few seconds, and you will see that something is gonna pop up here, which says like install to demo YouTube. Like that's the name of the workspace that I have, right? So you install that, it's gonna take you to this page, which pretty much is telling you like what is the scopes that are going to authorize, and then you just click in install app, right? And that's it, right? So that's pretty much how you get the token. So you just copy that, right? Get this token here, and then you put it in the config. So here in the config, you put it here in a Slack bot token. So that's the token, right? And then we need the channel ID. How to get the channel ID? So if we go to the workspace, this is my workspace here. So you can see that I have this channel, demo YouTube. So I want to read the messages from that channel. So in this case, I don't have anything, but we'll start typing once I start testing. But in this case, how to get the ID, right? So you click, then you right click here and view channel details, and you can see here at the bottom, this is the channel ID, right? So you just copy that, and then you go back to a sheet. Here in the sheet, you paste it, right? And voila, this is pretty much what we need to be able to make calls to API. So now with that, we can start with the first function. As I mentioned, the flow is gonna be first the main function that is gonna orchestrate everything. Then we get the features, and at the end, we're gonna finish with the function to write to a sheet, correct? Okay, so let's start with that. So this is the function that I have for main. You can see pretty straightforward, small. As always, I'm putting something on the top of the function just to tell us what the function is doing. In this case, orchestrates, fetches messages, builds the user map, and writes the results to a sheet, right? So this is pretty much what it's doing. The first call is gonna get the messages. The second call is gonna resolve the user IDs, right, from messages, meaning like it's gonna map the user IDs with the proper names. And then at the end, we're gonna write that to the sheet, right? So let's start with this one, right? This first fetcher. Actually, what we can do is we can start with the helper just to get a sense of what the helper is doing here. Okay, so this is the helper. You can see the only thing that it's doing is making a call to the API, right? It's just a GET request. So this API is a HTTP request, so pretty simple, uses an endpoint, inbuilt params, right? Then sends that to an endpoint, and then just parses the response. This API is simple. So you can see here the first step, we're building the query. The second step is we are issuing the HTTP request, and then we're passing the token that we just got from the app. And then at the end, we're just parsing the response, right? Like we're parsing this as a JSON. We are guarding in case there is an error, it doesn't break. And that's it, it just returns that in a JSON. So let's do that. Let's start with the first function, which is this one, right? Fetch Slack conversation history. So this is the function, right? So pulls full channel history from Slack using pagination, starting at from date, right? So this is starting from here. So if you're wondering what is pagination, basically the way APIs work is that it doesn't show you everything at once. It's not like you make a request and it's gonna literally show you all the data. It's gonna show you a certain amount of items per request, right? So you can think of it like a book. So you get the first page, then you do things with the first page, and if you need more data, you request the second page and third page and so on until you finish it with all the data. It's gonna be like a loop. That's how it works with APIs. This case is the same. It's just doing a loop. You can see here what I'm doing is like a do while. So it's just pretty much looping, finding new information. In this case, because I don't have, it's a new channel, we'll pull like, you just need one request, so it's gonna be super fast. But if you have like thousands of messages or something, it's gonna take a little bit, right? So you can see here that I'm doing the first step is converting this date in Unix, right? That's how the API works. So it needs to receive the date in Unix format. So that's what I'm doing here. And then here I'm just setting up this variable that is gonna aggregate all the data, all the messages, and it starts from the cursor of 0. So pretty much starts in 0, starts running, and that's like keeping track of what we already got from the calls. So you can see it starts the conversation. This is the endpoint that we're using, right? Conversation.history. So it's calling this endpoint and just doing that, and then aggregates the data, calls this endpoint if there are more data, aggregates data, and so on, and it finishes. And you can see at the end returns all the collected messages. So this is pretty much this function. And then if you go to the other one, which is we need to map the users. So you can see it builds a user ID name map by extracting IDs from messages and resolving via user info. So this is the endpoint that we need. You can see that I'm doing this one here. So in this function, I was calling this endpoint. In this function, I'm calling this other endpoint, right? So this function is similar to this one. So you can see, for example, here what we're doing is like we receive the messages, right? As an argument. So basically here we are collecting all the unique user IDs from the messages. And once we have that, we're kind of adding like a cap of how many we want to like map. This is just like a safe check. And then once we finish with that, we're going to be in a strip tree, right? So in this case, we're just making the call, right? So we're creating this map here. And just, once we get the data back as a JSON, right? We kind of like just, mapping, right? So just look out for that ID in the response, and then just gets a name and builds them up. And this is just, like a short sleep in each call, just to make sure that we don't get banned by the API. And then once we finish with that, we return the map. And with that map, you can see here, if we go back to the main, we are in the step, right? And now the only thing that is missing is just writing to the sheet, right? So let's go to that function. And this is the last function, right? So write Slack messages to sheet. So you can see that we receive the messages, we receive the map that we just created, we receive the sheet name, so we can create a sheet, and then we receive the headers, right? So you can see here the headers. When I created the first function, the main, you can see that I'm passing date, user, and message. These are the headers, how I want the table to be written in the spreadsheet. So that's why I put it there. And this is what we are receiving here, right? So the step one is that we transform the messages into this format, into this table. So yeah, basically what we're doing is that, right? Like we're kind of like like building this table so we can write it correctly in the spreadsheet. So once we have that, we're now checking if there is actually a sheet with that name. Remember the name here? If there is a sheet with that name, we clear the sheet so we can write new data. If there is no sheet, it's going to create one. So you can see here that if there is no sheet, it creates it. If there is a sheet, it clears the sheet, right? Then here we are just writing the headers, and then we are writing into a sheet in bulk. This is useful. So if you have a lot of data, it will just one call to a spreadsheet and writes everything at once. You don't want to be writing row by row because it's going to be forever, right? It's going to take forever. So if you can always try to write to a spreadsheet in bulk, that's more efficient. And once you finish with that, we kind of like just formatting the data like the date in this format so it looks good, right? So yeah, guys, that's pretty much, as you can see, it's a simple API to so now we can test and see if this actually works. So we save it. And actually, let me go back to the channel, and I think we can test. So hi, how are you? This is a test. And in this case, it will be just me, right? Because I don't have anyone here. But this should be this should be in the spreadsheet. So first time that you run this, you're gonna get a pop-up that you need to authorize the app. So you just follow the flow, the typical flow, advance here, and then go to the project. You allow access, continue. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. It's important that you invite this automation to the channel, right? So if we do that, if we are here in the channel, right? So we need to invite the bot, right? So you click in invite like that. Let me make this bigger, invite, and then add, and then you can invite the app that you just created, right? So this is the one that you just created, and then you click enter, and you can see that we added the app. And now in this case, the app can access and can see everything here. So let's run it again and see. And voila, you can see here that we have the messages, right? So we have the date, we have the user, and we have the message. In this case, you can see these were the 3 messages that I had, and these are just the notifications that I had here. Right, these notifications here that someone joined to the channel. If you don't want that, you can filter that out here in when you are writing to the sheet, the add function, right? Here you can filter that out. But in this case, just to show you how the API works. So this is it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. I will reply to them as soon as I can. And the code is down below in the description. As always, it's free. Just go there, download the code, and you can run this on your own. All right.